I'd like to talk a little bit about the ghosts that are supposedly here on site. And there are 3 and a terrible curse. Yes. So for many, many years, Queeset House was at first almost abandoned, and then second, underutilized. And the gardens around the building were completely covered with vegetation. So much so that some of the vines were big enough for people to actually sit on and swing back and forth. And I would always bring my local history students down here on a walk to show them the ruins of the garden, which have been so beautifully restored. And one of the boys decided to bring his girlfriend down here, and they were sitting on one of the vines swinging back and forth when he heard somebody approaching from behind him. And he looked over his shoulder, and he saw a man with white pants, a blue blazer, and a white straw hat. And he had a thin face and scared the bejesus out of my student, who jumped up off the swing, grabbed his girlfriend, and they both ran away. So I came back and reported this to my class. We had never shown anyone a picture of Winthrop Ames, but that was Winthrop Ames. It looked exactly like how Mr. Ames has been described. Now, it's very interesting because since the garden has been restored, no one has reported seeing Mr. Ames. So perhaps that's what he was looking for, to get that garden taken care of so they didn't have to walk in the ruins anymore. Here in the house, there's been reports of a maid who has stayed here long after her wages have been stopped, polishing the furniture. And the way you're supposed to see that ghost is to walk down the central hall and look out of the corner of your eye, and sometime you might be able to see her there. Now, she's a very happy ghost. She's here polishing furniture. Wouldn't you rather take her home? The upstairs ghost, however, is one of the very few unfriendly ghosts here in Easton. And he appeared to one of the people who were house sitting here when the property was owned by Doug King. The house sitter was up on the 3rd floor in one of the servants' quarters when all of a sudden the room grew cold enough to wake him up. And when he woke up, he saw at the foot of his bed a green fog rising. And inside the green fog was a short, little, wizened-looking man who tried to communicate with the person, who was, of course, pulling the blankets up as far as he could, trying to hide. But he couldn't say anything. And he got angrier and angrier that he couldn't communicate, until eventually, after what was described to me as forever, he got so angry, he just disappeared in a pop. Okay? Well, when I hear a ghost story, I always want to try to track down the possible origins of the ghost story. So we began to look at some of the people that were here in the house. The description matched an English character actor named George Arliss. Now, George Arliss was very, very famous for one role. He played the Raja in a play called The Green Goddess. And it was almost like a Shangri-La story. But he was the crazy Raja of this little kingdom, the Green Goddess. And he toured it all over the country. And when he got to San Francisco, they actually invented Green Goddess salad dressing in his honor. So it's my theory that if anyone is appearing here at Queeset House out of a green mist, it's probably the Raja of the Green Goddess, George Arliss himself. Now, I did mention that there was a curse, and the curse was indeed a terrible curse. Winthrop, as we have heard, was a Broadway producer, and he was very serious about uplifting Broadway. But he really did know a good show when he saw one. And while he wasn't going to invest it himself, he heard a song called Tea for Two. And the show that it was in seemed to him to be bound to be a hit. So he had many friends, and he went to one of his friends named Harry and said, "Look, Harry, if you put $100,000 into this play, I'm sure you'll make a lot of money." And Harry was a little bit down on his luck, so making a lot of money was very attractive to him. So what Harry did was sell Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees to raise that $100,000. And as he was leaving town, of course, the Babe put the curse of the Bambino on the Red Sox, and for 86 years, we never won a World Series. Now, there's a lot of twists and turns in that story. Some historians say No No Nanette, which was the play, was not the cause of selling Babe Ruth, but most recent historians agree that it probably was. The interesting thing, however, is that Babe Ruth actually stayed in the Boston area during the winters for several years after he went to New York. He actually liked where he was living out in Sudbury because as a city boy he always wanted to be out in the countryside, sort of the countryside like we have here. And it was only a few years later that he left, probably without a curse. So that's that part of the story. And I'm on the lookout for the ghosts, but I've never seen them here.
That's a great story.